Shadow's Edge, the doorbell rang at exactly 8:17 p.m. on a rain-soaked Tuesday. Olivia Blackwood paused, wine glass halfway to her lips. The documentary she wasn't really watching, continuing to narrate about deep-sea creatures in the background. No one rang her doorbell anymore. After 6 months of journalists' well-meaning friends and the occasional private investigator, everyone knew better. She set the glass down carefully on the marble countertop, her heart suddenly racing with an intuition she couldn't explain. Through the security camera feed on her phone, she saw him, Jonathan, standing in the rain without an umbrella, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled, dark hair plastered to his forehead. "Impossible," she whispered, fingers trembling as she zoomed in on the image, certain her mind was playing tricks. But there he stood, her husband, the tech visionary whose face had graced magazine covers and whose disappearance had spawned conspiracy theories across the internet. Olivia moved toward the door as if in a dream, each step both mechanical and surreal. 6 months, 1 week, and 4 days of silence. No calls, no messages, no ransom demands. Just emptiness and unanswered questions that had hollowed her from the inside out. She opened the door but remained in the threshold, blocking entry to the home they had once shared. "Liv," Jonathan said, his voice hoarse. His eyes, those penetrating hazel eyes that had once looked through financial reports with laser focus, now seemed both clearer and more vulnerable than she remembered. "You're alive." She meant it to sound accusatory, but it came out as something closer to wonder. "I'm sorry." He didn't move to touch her, seeming to understand that the chasm between them wouldn't be crossed with physical contact. "I know those words are inadequate, but I am profoundly sorry." Olivia's mind raced through the possibilities she had rehearsed during sleepless nights. Amnesia, kidnapping, witness protection, a secret government mission. Each theory had seemed more plausible than the simple truth that he had chosen to leave her. "Where were you?" The question she had imagined asking 1,000 times came out surprisingly steady. "A treatment facility in Switzerland, then a monastery in Tibet." He paused, swallowing hard. I wasn't well, Liv. I couldn't drag you down with me." A bitter laugh escaped her. "So instead you left me wondering if you were dead in a ditch somewhere." "That was your solution?" Rain continued to pour around him, but Jonathan made no move to seek shelter. "I wasn't thinking clearly. The anxiety, the panic attacks, the pressure, it was crushing me. I thought I was protecting you." Lightning illuminated the sky behind him, and for a moment Olivia saw the shadows beneath his eyes, the weight loss evident in the hollows of his cheeks. Despite everything, her heart ached at the sight. "Protecting me," she repeated. "Do you have any idea what these months have been like? The police investigations, your company in chaos, your mother's health declining from the stress?" His face crumpled at that last revelation. "How is she?" "Stable now. No thanks to you." Olivia felt the anger rising, 6 months of grief transmuting into rage. "Why are you here, Jonathan?" "Why now?" He looked directly into her eyes then, a certainty in his gaze that seemed both new and familiar. "Because I'm better now. Because I've done the work I needed to do. And because—" He hesitated, then continued with quiet determination. "Because I want us to start a family, the way we always talked about before everything fell apart." Olivia felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her. Of all the things she had imagined him saying upon a return she'd stopped believing would happen, this was never among them. "You vanish for half a year and then appear expecting us to have a child?" The absurdity of it struck her fully. "Are you insane?" "No," he said with surprising gentleness. "For the first time in years, I'm actually sane. Clear-headed, I know what matters now." Rain dripped from his hair onto his shoulders as they stood in silence, the weight of his request hanging between them. Despite herself, Olivia found her resolve weakening at the sight of him, the man she had mourned, had loved, had built dreams with before those dreams shattered. "Come inside," she said finally, stepping back from the doorway. "You're soaking wet and we have a lot to talk about." As Jonathan crossed the threshold into their home, Olivia felt something shift in the universe, a chapter closing and another beginning, though whether it led to healing or further heartbreak remained to be written in the uncertain pages ahead. Fragments of truth. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the guest bedroom where Jonathan had spent the night. Olivia leaned against the doorframe, watching him sleep, a luxury she'd been denied for 6 agonizing months. In slumber, he looked almost like the man she'd married 4 years ago. before Blackwood Technologies had exploded into a billion-dollar enterprise, and the weight of success had begun to crush him. She'd barely slept, her mind racing between relief, anger, and confusion. The coffee mug warmed her hands as she observed the rise and fall of his chest, still half expecting him to vanish like morning mist. Jonathan stirred, his eyes opening to find her watching. For a moment, disorientation clouded his features before recognition settled in. "You're still here," he murmured. "It's my house," Olivia replied, the edge in her voice unmistakable. "You're the one who disappeared." He sat up slowly, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Fair enough. I want to know everything," she said, moving into the room but maintaining her distance, perching on the edge of an armchair. "No more vague explanations. I deserve the full truth." Jonathan nodded, his expression solemn. "You do." What followed was a story that unfolded like a confession, halting at first, then gaining momentum as the dam of silence finally broke. 3 weeks before his disappearance, Jonathan had suffered a complete breakdown during a board meeting. Hidden from the public and covered up by his executive team, he'd found himself unable to speak, breathe, or function as panic overwhelmed him. "I'd been having episodes for months," he explained, his voice steady but quiet. "Hiding them from everyone, including you. Taking pills to sleep, pills to wake up, pills to function through meetings. I convinced myself it was temporary, that I just needed to push through." Olivia's grip tightened around her mug. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because admitting weakness felt impossible. The Jonathan Blackwood everyone believed in, that you married, was supposed to be invincible." His laugh was hollow. "The irony is, trying to maintain that illusion nearly destroyed me." After the boardroom incident, he'd increased his medication, spiraling into dependency while maintaining a facade of normalcy at home. Then came the night terrors, paranoia, and finally, the overwhelming conviction that he was failing everyone, especially Olivia. "I became convinced you'd be better off without me," he continued, meeting her gaze, "that I was poisoning your life. So I planned my exit, liquidated accounts you didn't know about, arranged for the treatment facility in Switzerland. I told myself it would just be for a few weeks." "Weeks turned into months," Olivia said quietly, the anger in her voice now tempered with sadness. Jonathan nodded. The withdrawal was brutal, worse than I'd imagined. And then came the real work, facing who I'd become, who I wanted to be. He looked down at his hands. "I couldn't contact you until I was certain I wouldn't disappoint you again. So instead you disappeared without a word, leaving me to imagine the worst." Her voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what that did to me?" "I've spent months trying to imagine it," he answered, his eyes meeting hers. "And I know nothing I say can undo that pain." Silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. "After Switzerland," Olivia prompted eventually, "you mentioned Tibet?" Jonathan nodded. "A monastery in the mountains. No technology, no distractions. Just meditation, physical work, and silence. Learning to exist without the constant noise in my head telling me I wasn't enough." A small smile touched his lips. The monks found it amusing, a tech CEO learning to chop wood and carry water. "And this transformation led you to decide we should have a child?" Olivia couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. "Not exactly." Jonathan shifted, pulling something from the pocket of his borrowed robe, a worn leather journal. "This helped me remember what matters." He handed it to her, and Olivia recognized it immediately, a gift she'd given him on their first anniversary. She opened it tentatively, finding pages filled with his handwriting, dated entries spanning years. "Read the one from April 12th, 3 years ago," he suggested quietly. Olivia found the date, her eyes scanning the page. Olivia talked about our future children today, how she imagines teaching them to paint, taking them hiking on the trails behind the house. The way her face lit up made everything else fade away. For that moment, the pressure, the deadlines, the expectations, none of it mattered. "I saw our life as it could be, should be. Need to remember this feeling when things get overwhelming. This is the point of it all." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. "You never told me you wrote about this." "I stopped writing in it when things got bad," Jonathan admitted. "But in Tibet I read it cover to cover. It reminded me of who I was before the anxiety took over. What we dreamed about, what I wanted before I convinced myself I didn't deserve it." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. I'm not asking to pick up exactly where we left off, Olivia. I know that's impossible. But the clarity I've found, it's shown me what I truly want. A family with you. A purpose beyond quarterly reports and stock prices. Olivia closed the journal, her emotions turbulent. Jonathan, you can't just reappear and expect— I don't expect anything, he interrupted gently. I only hope, and I'm willing to prove myself, however long it takes. A knock at the front door interrupted them, the sound echoing through the house. Olivia frowned, checking her watch. That's probably Detective Harlow. I called him last night after you fell asleep. Alarm flashed across Jonathan's face. The police? You were declared a missing person, she reminded him, standing. And despite everything, I thought someone should know you're alive. Jonathan nodded, accepting this consequence of his actions. Of course. As Olivia moved toward the door, she paused, turning back. I haven't decided anything, Jonathan. About us, about a family. I need time. Time is something I can give now, he replied softly. It's something I've learned the value of. She nodded once, then went to answer the door, leaving Jonathan with the journal, a fragment of their past that somehow, against all odds, had become a tenuous bridge to a possible future neither of them could yet fully imagine. The precipice, Mr. Blackwood. Would you care to comment on your mysterious absence? Is it true you were in rehab for substance abuse? Olivia, how does it feel having your husband return from the dead? The questions bombarded them like artillery fire as they navigated the gauntlet of reporters outside the restaurant. 3 weeks had passed since Jonathan's return, and despite their attempts at privacy, the story had inevitably broken. What began as whispers in business circles had exploded into a media frenzy after an employee at Blackwood Technologies leaked Jonathan's reappearance to a tech blog. Jonathan kept his arm protectively around Olivia's waist as they pushed through the crowd, his face an impassive mask that revealed none of the anxiety she knew churned beneath the surface. His therapy techniques were being put to the ultimate test. No comment at this time, he repeated mechanically as they finally reached their car, where Warren, their newly hired security consultant, held the door open. Once inside the blessed quiet of the vehicle, Olivia exhaled sharply. That was worse than last time. Jonathan loosened his tie, his knuckles white. I'm sorry you have to endure this. I've had practice, she replied, not unkindly. 6 months of hounding by journalists had thickened her skin, though the intensity had doubled since Jonathan's return. Warren slid into the driver's seat. There's another situation at the office, sir. The board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. Jonathan nodded, unsurprised. Since his return, the power dynamics at Blackwood Technologies had shifted dramatically. His absence had created a vacuum, and nature, particularly corporate nature, abhorred vacuums. His former COO, Richard Dawson, had assumed control with remarkable efficiency, redirecting the company's focus from Jonathan's innovative passion projects to safer, more profitable ventures. They're going to try to remove you permanently, Olivia said, voicing what they both knew. Richard has been consolidating support for weeks. Let them try, Jonathan replied, though his tone lacked its former confidence. The company had been his identity for so long. The thought of losing it felt like another kind of death. Olivia studied his profile as city lights washed over his face. Is fighting for the company what you really want, after everything you've realized? The question hung between them as Warren navigated through evening traffic. In the 3 weeks since his return, they had established a cautious routine. Jonathan staying in the guest room, joining Olivia for meals, attending therapy both individually and together. Slow steps toward rebuilding trust. I don't know, he admitted finally. Part of me wants to walk away from all of it. But another part feels responsible, for the employees, for the vision. Your absence proved the company can survive without you, she pointed out. Maybe that's freeing, not threatening. He turned to look at her, a small smile touching his lips. When did you become so wise about letting go? Around month 4 of your disappearance, she said with unexpected candor. When I realized I might need to build a life without you in it. The words stung, but Jonathan nodded, accepting their truth. And now? He asked quietly. Before she could answer, Warren interrupted from the front seat. Ms. Blackwood, there's someone at your house. They both leaned forward as Warren pulled up security footage on the car's display. A woman paced anxiously on their porch, petite, blonde, professionally dressed. "That's Regina Carter," Jonathan said, tension evident in his voice. "Your former assistant?" Olivia asked, frowning. "The one who left the company right before you disappeared?" He nodded, his expression troubled. "We need to talk to her." 20 minutes later, they sat in the living room as Regina clutched a mug of tea with trembling hands. Once poised and confident, she now appeared haunted, constantly glancing toward the windows as if expecting someone to be watching. "I'm sorry to come unannounced," she began, "but when I heard you were back..." She looked directly at Jonathan. "They'll come after you." "They know what you found." Olivia felt her stomach tighten. "What who found?" "The algorithm," Regina said, lowering her voice despite being inside the house. "The one Jonathan was working on before he left, the privacy protection protocol." She turned to Olivia. "Did he tell you about it?" Olivia shook her head, looking to Jonathan, whose face had gone pale. "It was supposed to be Blackwood's next big product," he explained quietly. "A way for users to truly own their data, to prevent the kind of surveillance and manipulation that's become standard practice." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "But I discovered something in the process, evidence that several major tech companies, including partners of Blackwood, were already exploiting vulnerabilities we hadn't made public. Corporate espionage," Regina added, "worth billions." When Jonathan started asking questions, things got complicated. "Are you saying my husband's breakdown was connected to this?" Olivia asked, the pieces suddenly shifting in her mind. Regina and Jonathan exchanged a look that sent a chill through Olivia's body. "The panic attacks were real," Jonathan clarified. "The pressure, the anxiety, all of it was happening. But yes, there was more." He turned fully toward Olivia, taking her hands in his. "I didn't just leave for treatment. I left because I thought it might protect you from becoming collateral damage." The revelation hung in the air, recontextualizing everything Olivia thought she understood about his disappearance. "Richard Dawson has been systematically dismantling the project since taking control," Regina continued. "Anyone who knew about it has been reassigned or pushed out. But the data still exists, and Jonathan is the only one who knows where all the pieces are. Tomorrow's board meeting isn't just about control of the company," Jonathan said grimly. "It's about burying what I found." Olivia stood abruptly, walking to the window to peer through the blinds at their darkened yard. The narrative she'd been constructing, of a husband who left solely due to personal demons, was unraveling, replaced by something more complex and frightening. "So where does that leave us?" she asked finally, turning back to face them. "Where does it leave our discussions about starting a family?" She fixed Jonathan with an intense gaze. "Was that part even real? Or was it just a cover story for your return?" Jonathan crossed the room to her, his expression pained. "Everything I told you about my breakdown, my treatment, my realizations, it was all true. I came back for you, for us." He took a deep breath. "But I can't pretend the other part doesn't exist. These people are dangerous, Olivia, and now I've pulled you back into it." "You never pulled me out of it," she corrected him. "I was here, dealing with the aftermath while you were gone." A heavy silence fell between them, the precipice they stood on suddenly clearer and more treacherous than ever. "What do you want to do?" she asked finally. Jonathan looked between the two women, his wife, whom he'd sought to protect at the cost of their relationship, and his former assistant, who had risked everything to warn them. "I think," he said slowly, "we need to finish what I started, before we can talk about any kind of future." Olivia nodded, a new determination settling over her features. "Then we do it together this time. No more secrets, no more noble sacrifices." She reached for his hand. "Partners in everything or nothing at all." As Regina began explaining what she knew about Dawson's plans for the board meeting, Olivia and Jonathan remained connected by their intertwined fingers, a small bridge across the chasm that still separated them, but stronger than it had been since his return. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with danger, but for the first time since Jonathan had appeared on her doorstep in the rain, Olivia felt like they were truly facing the same direction. Roots and wings. The morning of the board meeting dawned with an electricity in the air that reminded Olivia of approaching storms. She watched Jonathan adjust his tie in the mirror, his movements precise and deliberate, Gone was the haunted look he'd worn upon his return. In its place, a focused intensity she recognized from their early days together. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, handing him the cufflinks she'd given him on their wedding day. Platinum with tiny embedded sapphires that matched her engagement ring. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, accepting them with a small smile. "Having you with me makes all the difference." They had spent the night strategizing with Regina, piecing together the fragments of evidence Jonathan had hidden before his departure. The algorithm designed to give users unprecedented control over their personal data had revealed a web of corporate surveillance that implicated not only Blackwood's partners but several board members as, "Well, remember," Olivia said, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from his jacket. "We're not fighting for the company. We're fighting for what's right." Jonathan nodded, covering her hand with his. The past 4 weeks had transformed their relationship in ways neither had anticipated. Working together toward a common purpose had begun to heal wounds that therapy alone couldn't touch. "Whatever happens today," he said quietly, "I want you to know I meant what I said when I came back. About starting a family." His eyes held hers steadily. "But I understand if that's no longer what you want." Olivia's breath caught slightly. They hadn't revisited the topic since Regina's revelation, focusing instead on the immediate threat. "Let's get through today first," she said, though her expression softened. One precipice at a time. The Blackwood Technologies headquarters buzzed with tension as they entered, escorted by Warren. Employees stared openly, conversations halting mid-sentence as the company's founder and his wife passed. Jonathan greeted each person by name, his genuine warmth a stark contrast to the corporate politics awaiting them upstairs. "Richard." Dawson was already seated at the head of the boardroom table when they arrived. A position that had once been Jonathan's. His smile didn't reach his eyes as he stood to greet them. "Jonathan, Olivia, what a pleasant surprise." His gaze flickered to Olivia with barely concealed annoyance. "Though I believe this meeting is for board members only." "My wife stays," Jonathan said simply, pulling out a chair for her beside his usual seat. For the next 2 hours, Olivia watched a corporate chess match unfold as Dawson methodically laid out his case for officially removing Jonathan from operational control. The company had stabilized under his leadership, he argued. The markets had responded positively to his more conservative approach. Jonathan's sabbatical and subsequent return had created uncertainty they couldn't afford. When he finished, Jonathan stood, connecting his tablet to the presentation screen. "I've listened carefully, Richard, and I appreciate your perspective. Now I'd like to share mine." What followed was not the defensive justification Dawson had clearly expected, but a methodical presentation of what Jonathan had discovered before his departure: the systematic exploitation of user data, the backdoor vulnerabilities, and most damning of all, communications proving Dawson's knowledge and involvement. "This evidence will be released to regulatory authorities this afternoon," Jonathan concluded calmly, "along with the completed privacy protection algorithm, open-sourced and free for any company to implement." The boardroom erupted in chaos. Accusations flew, threats were made, and through it all, Jonathan remained composed. Olivia steadfast beside him. "You'll destroy the company," Dawson hissed, his facade cracking. "No," Jonathan corrected him. "I'm saving its soul." When the vote came, it was closer than they'd hoped, but ultimately in Jonathan's favor, not out of loyalty but self-preservation, as board members distanced themselves from Dawson's schemes. As they left the building, Jonathan turned to Olivia in the privacy of their car. "It's done. The evidence is already with the authorities." He looked suddenly exhausted, the adrenaline draining away. "But the company will never be the same." "Maybe it shouldn't be," Olivia suggested, taking his hand. "Maybe this is your chance to rebuild it as something better." That evening, they sat on the deck of their home, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The events of the day seemed almost surreal now, like watching a film of someone else's life. "I've been thinking," Jonathan said, breaking a comfortable silence, "about stepping back from day-to-day operations, creating a trust to guide the company's ethical direction, but bringing in new leadership." Olivia studied him, searching for signs of regret or uncertainty, but finding none. "And what would you do instead?" "Focus on the future," he said, turning to her. "Our future, if you'll still have one with me." She took a deep breath. feeling the weight of the decision before her. These past weeks working together, I've seen a different side of you. The brilliance I always knew was there, but also a strength I wasn't sure you possessed. I found it in the mountains, he said with a small smile. Chopping wood? Carrying water? I think, she said slowly, that I'm ready to talk about that family you mentioned. His eyes widened slightly. Are you sure? Not completely, she admitted, but I'm sure enough to try. To plant roots even knowing the storms that might come. Jonathan reached for her hand, his touch gentle but certain. That's all I can ask for. A chance to grow something new together. As darkness fell around them, they remained on the deck speaking softly of possibilities, of names and hopes, of fears conquered and those still to face. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since Jonathan's return, it felt like one they were truly walking together. Full circle, the nursery walls were a soft sage green, catching the golden afternoon light that streamed through half-opened blinds. Olivia stood in the doorway, one hand resting on her rounded belly, the other holding a small stuffed elephant they had found in a local artisan shop. 8 months had passed since the boardroom showdown. 8 months of rebuilding not just the company but themselves, their marriage, their vision for the future. The decision to start a family had not been made lightly, coming only after months of therapy, both individually and together, and the gradual rekindling of trust that had once seemed irrevocably broken. What do you think? Jonathan asked, stepping back from the crib he'd just finished assembling. His hair was slightly longer now, his frame filled out from regular meals and exercise. The haunted look that had followed him back from his self-imposed exile had faded, replaced by something steadier, more grounded. It's perfect, Olivia replied, placing the elephant carefully on a shelf. Though I still say we should have hired someone to do this. Jonathan smiled, wiping his hands on his jeans. And miss the character-building experience of deciphering those instructions? Never. Their laughter filled the room, easy and genuine in a way that still sometimes surprised Olivia. There had been moments, especially in those early days after his return, when she'd feared they would never find this rhythm again. A chime from Jonathan's phone interrupted the moment. His expression shifted as he read the notification, not quite returning to the anxiety of the past, but tensing noticeably. What is it? Olivia asked, crossing to his side. Message from the legal team, he said, showing her the screen. The federal investigation is expanding. They want me to testify next month. Olivia felt a flutter of concern. The fallout from Jonathan's revelations had been far-reaching, with multiple investigations into data privacy violations across the tech industry. Blackwood Technologies had weathered the storm better than most, thanks to Jonathan's proactive approach and the goodwill generated by open-sourcing the privacy algorithm. But the process had been grueling, with constant legal meetings and the ever-present scrutiny of regulators and the press. Will that be before or after the baby? She asked, practical concerns immediately at the forefront. Before, if all goes according to schedule, he assured her, placing a hand gently beside hers on her belly. I wouldn't miss this for anything. She searched his face, looking for signs of the old patterns, the tendency to shoulder burdens alone, to protect her by excluding her. Instead, she found open concern but also resolution. We'll handle it together, he said, answering her unspoken question, like everything else. Later that evening, as they sat reviewing hospital options and birth plans, Jonathan's phone rang again. The number was blocked, but something made him answer and put it on speaker. Jonathan Blackwood, a distorted voice, greeted him. I believe we have mutual interest to discuss. Olivia froze, recognition dawning immediately. Though they had never met in person, she knew this was Vernon Ellis, the tech mogul whose company had been most implicated by Jonathan's evidence. Ellis had gone underground when the investigations began, reportedly fleeing to a country without extradition. I have nothing to discuss with you, Vernon, Jonathan replied calmly, though his hand sought Olivia's, gripping it tightly. I think you do, the voice continued. Your testimony could be problematic for many powerful people who would be grateful for your discretion. Are you threatening me? Jonathan asked, his voice steady. Quite the opposite. I'm offering an opportunity. 20 million, transferred to accounts that can never be traced to you. All you need to do is develop some memory issues before your testimony. Olivia watched Jonathan closely, remembering the man who had disappeared rather than face conflict, who had broken under the weight of pressure and expectation. For a heartbeat, she saw uncertainty flicker across his features. Then he looked at her, at the evidence of their future growing within her, and his expression cleared. "I'm not interested, Vernon. And this conversation is being recorded." A string of obscenities erupted from the phone before the line went dead. Jonathan set the device down carefully, letting out a long breath. "Are you okay?" Olivia asked, squeezing his hand. "Better than okay," he replied, and she could see the truth of it in his eyes. The old Jonathan might have been tempted, not by greed, but by the path of least resistance, the avoidance of conflict. This Jonathan had found a different kind of strength. "We should call Detective Harlow," she said, already reaching for her phone. The detective who had first handled Jonathan's missing persons case had become an unexpected ally in navigating the legal complexities of the tech scandal. As they waited for Harlow to answer, Jonathan pulled Olivia close, his hand protectively covering their unborn child. "6 months ago, I was hiding in a monastery, convinced I had nothing to offer anyone," he said quietly. "Now I'm about to become a father. Life is strange." "Life is exactly what we make of it," Olivia corrected him gently. "Even when it takes detours we never expected." The baby kicked then, a strong movement that they both felt. Jonathan laughed, the sound full of wonder and free from the shadows that had once haunted him. Outside their window, rain began to fall. A gentle spring shower reminiscent of the night Jonathan had returned, soaked and seeking forgiveness on their doorstep. But unlike that night, there was no uncertainty in their home now. No chasm of mistrust or fear of the unknown. Instead, there was simply this: two people who had weathered the storm, standing together on solid ground, ready to welcome the future they had chosen to build together. One day, one choice, one leap of faith at a time. As Detective Harlow's voice came through the phone, Olivia caught Jonathan's gaze and held it, a silent affirmation passing between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, testimony, parenthood, the continued rebuilding of all they had nearly lost, they would face them not as broken individuals, but as something stronger forged in the crucible of their shared journey. Some might call it resilience, others forgiveness. But in the quiet moments between crises and celebrations, Olivia had come to recognize it as something both simpler and more profound. Love, in its most honest and enduring form, the kind that remains when everything else falls away, the kind that returns even from the shadows, the kind that builds new beginnings from broken pieces. And that, she knew with certainty as she looked at the man who had once disappeared but found his way back to her, was enough to face whatever came next.